After revealing its all-new flagship electric 3-row SUV last month in the Kia EV9, this week at the New York Auto Show, we're finally getting a chance to check it out up close. And while we weren't able to take it for a drive just yet, I think this might be one of the most important new electric vehicles of the year. Let's get into it. Based on Hyundai's eGMP platform, which is the same as what you get on the Ioniq 5, the Ioniq 6, and the Kia EV6, the Kia EV9 is going to be available in a few different configs. The standard range model features a 76.1 kilowatt-hour battery, but there's also going to be a larger 99.8 kilowatt-hour battery option. And while we're still waiting for the official EPA figures, Kia says it's targeting about a 300-mile range for that larger battery. Now, I should mention that those two models aren't going to be exactly what you call fast. The standard range model is expected to get a 0 to 60 time of about 8.2 seconds, while the long-range model actually is even slower than that at about 9.4 seconds from 0 to 60 because of that larger and heavier battery pack. That said, if you want something with a bit more giddy-up, there's also the Kia EV9 GT Line model, which features a dual-motor all-wheel drive system, and that's going to be much faster with a 0 to 60 time of about 5.4 seconds thereabout. Now, for those of you familiar with Kia's gas-powered SUVs, the EV9 does share some similarities with the Telluride, but at 197 inches, it is a touch longer. But more importantly, its design is very different. I mean, just look at it. It's sleek and modern without going too far into that sci-fi futuristic look like Hyundai's Ioniq 9 does. And I think that could make a very big difference with buyers who might get scared off by that really aggressive styling on that Ioniq 9. And even though it is really sleek, you still get some nice curves, which kind of brings a little bit of roundness and warmth to the design, so it's not extremely hard-edged. And of course, on the sides, you get pop-out door handles that go flush with the body to preserve a little bit of that aerodynamicness. Now, up front, you have a really clean fascia with Kia's updated take on what it's calling a digital Tiger grille, which you see are these lights right here. And another interesting thing is that the EV9 is going to be Kia's first car that supports OTA updates. So obviously you can download new software, but you can even download new animations for these lights, so you can customize the car when you unlock it and you walk up to the car. It's going to be a little bit different for each person depending on their settings. The EV9 also has 15 sensors located throughout the car. There's also 2 LiDAR sensors up front, which supports object detection, which works to support a lot of those important driver safety features. Now, like I said before, the Kia EV9 supports up to 350 kilowatt charging, but one interesting thing is that it also supports a vehicle-to-load feature, which lets the car act like a giant battery pack to charge things like laptops or other electronics. And you even get a really handy standard outlet jack in the trunk, so you don't have to worry with special cables or anything like that. You just plug in and go. Now, as for charging speeds, Kia says that when you're connected to the right charger, the EV9 can go from 10 to 80% battery in just 25 minutes. Now, I know wheels aren't exactly the most high-tech thing, but I do want to call them out because I think they're kind of cool looking. On the standard model, you get these really interesting, funky triangle wheels, but on the GT Line model, you get these big 21-inch wheels with this interesting plus-shape pattern, which kind of reminds me of a D-pad on a game controller, which I think is a nice touch to, younger buyers. Now, we're inside the EV9, and when Kia talks about interior design for this car, they've touched on 2 kind of design philosophies. One is reductionism, and the other is technology for life. And that kind of blends together to create some interesting combinations of minimalism, but also some really clever design features, most notably these haptic buttons on the dash. Now, normally when the car is off, there's no lighting, and so they're kind of hard to see. But when you turn the car on, they come to life. But more importantly, they have a haptic feedback system built in. So if you want to keep your eyes on the car while driving, like you should, you can still reach over and touch the home or the map button and the search button, and you'll get a physical feedback to make sure you really pressed it, which is really nice. Now, one of the other interesting design cues is that you'll notice that there's not, both inside and out, there's not a lot of high gloss surfaces. It's kind of a chrome delete look to the entire car. And I talked to one of Kia's designers, Jochen, and he said that was a very deliberate move by Kia to kind of make the car not only stand out in a modern way, but it also blends well with other modern electronics, because if you look at smartphones or laptops, there's not a ton of truly shiny, chromy devices, and they've also gotten rid of a lot of those high gloss surfaces on the interior, including there's no piano black anywhere on the car, which I think is a really nice modern touch. And once again, for younger buyers, it makes a lot of sense in terms of like those more traditional cars that have a lot of chromy, shiny bits. That kind of looks a little bit dated, in my opinion, nowadays. As for infotainment, you can see that we have kind of one long, skinny screen that's divided up into two parts, which I think is really good and adds to that minimalistic look. You have one screen behind the steering wheel, and that gets all your, important driver metrics. But then there's also another screen over here for the passenger and to control, see stuff like maps and for just general use. And I also gotta point out, I really like how it's not a fully touchscreen based system. You still have traditional buttons for climate control and stuff like that. I really like that because I think it's a good blend of modern design with also old school analog buttons. As for the steering wheel, it's a pretty standard affair. You get buttons for media controls and voice integration and stuff like that. One thing that is kind of interesting is that this Kia logo will actually light up. I don't know how to do it right now, but I'm actually glad that it's not, because if I'm, especially if I'm driving in the dark, I don't want extra light blasting me in the face. So it's nice that you can turn that on and turn it off at will. Now, one last little attention to detail that I really appreciate is that Kia says for parents, they made the headrests in the EV9 mesh, so it's easy for parents to turn around and see what their kids are doing, which is a really thoughtful touch. Now, here we are in the second row, and one interesting thing is that in front, there's this dual level console, which impacts both the front and the second seat passengers. So you get a little bit of storage in front, but for the second row seats, you can also pull it out, and here I have a little table. I can also push it forward, and there's even more storage inside here. The other thing that I think everybody is gonna love is that there are tons of USB-C ports scattered throughout the car. There's 2 in front, 2 in the middle, and 2 in back. And you can see they're kind of cleverly hidden because they're kind of bolted right into the seats right here and on the other side right there. Now, obviously in back, that big feature is that third row of seats. Now, it's not huge, but I'm gonna get in and kind of show you what it's like. So, not too bad. Obviously, it is a little bit cramped because this is a mid-size SUV, but as long as the people in front don't push all the way back, I actually have a decent amount of room. It's not your ideal situation. I'm about 6 foot, and I don't want to be here for a long road trip, but for a short trip, it's not a big deal, and it's not too bad to get out either. And in back, it's not huge because you have 3 rows of seats, but Kia says you get about 20 cubic feet of space in back. But if you really need some extra storage, you can fold down that third and second row seat, and then suddenly you have about 80 cubic feet of room. And that's pretty good. Also, there's a little bit of extra storage underneath, which is where you can find your charger. And if that's not enough, there's a frunk in front too. It's not huge, but once again, enough for a day bag or something like that. So now that we've had a chance to take a closer look at the EV9, I think it looks awesome. It's surprisingly roomy, and the tech looks solid too. But remember when I was talking about the EV9 maybe being one of the most important new electric vehicles of the year? Now, I admit that might be a little bit of a stretch, but hear me out. When you look at the EV SUV market, there's a ton of luxury EV SUVs with 3 rows, like the Tesla Model X, or the Volvo EX90, or the Mercedes EQS SUV. But those are all radically more expensive, starting at least $25,000 more than the EV9. Now, we know we don't have official pricing for the EV9 just yet, but we're expecting it to launch at around $55,000 to $56,000. So it's actually kind of affordable, and for families, that might be a really good Goldilocks zone. And then when you think about more similarly priced rivals like the Model Y from Tesla or the Mercedes EQB, those are smaller, and that back seat is even more cramped. So once again, a really nice blend of size, affordability, and tech. But what do you think? Is the EV9 something you're interested in? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to Engadget for more news, reviews, and videos real soon.